Hey guys, tonight we sail away from comfort, literally. You're perched on the edge of a Viking longboat, boots slick with sea spray, your hands numb despite the thick wool gloves. Tonight, we step back in time, way back to the brutal and breathtaking 9th century. It's not going to be warm. It's not going to be friendly. And spoiler alert, you probably won't survive this. But one man did. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with where you're watching from and your local time. I always love seeing how far this journey reaches. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The salty wind is wild, and you're steering hard against it. You're not alone. There's a crew of 12, all seasoned Norsemen, all hungry for trade, adventure, maybe a little trouble. You're hunting seals along the coast of what we now call northern Norway. But this isn't some leisurely fjord cruise. This is the Viking Age, roughly 860 CE, and you're chasing silver, meat, and stories worth bringing back to the chieftain. One mainstream fact to anchor us: the Vikings weren't just raiders. They were traders, explorers, and sometimes, like now, survivors of their own ambition. That's when the sky begins to darken, not with nightfall, but with storm. You try to read the clouds, but this fog rolls in too fast, thick as sheep's wool and just as stubborn. You shout commands, but the wind eats your words. A rogue wave slaps your hull. Another one tears the sail, and then impact. The longship strikes sea ice, jagged and impossible. The bow splinters like brittle bone. You fly forward, smacking your ribs into the oar bench. Some of your men scream, some don't. The ocean, suddenly full of teeth, drags several below before you can even call their names. When the water calms, you find yourself clinging to a chunk of wreckage. Not land, not hope, just frozen driftwood and the terrible realization that no one else is shouting anymore. Now you're not steering, you're drifting, and soon you're dragging yourself ashore onto ice-crusted Earth, the edge of what modern maps call the Arctic Circle. Your ship is wrecked, your men are gone, but you, against every odd, are not. You collapse in the snow, breath hammering your chest like a war drum. The silence around you is surreal. No birds, no waves, just wind, cold and cruel, whispering in your ear like it already knows your fate. Fun fact: some scholars think early Norse explorers may have reached parts of Greenland or the high Arctic centuries before most maps ever showed them. But historians still argue whether these were planned expeditions or tragic accidents like yours. The hours pass, maybe days, hard to tell. You build a pathetic little lean-to from pieces of the shattered boat and a few seal skins. You ration the dried fish in your belt pouch. You drink meltwater from snow you hold against your lips until it stops stinging. You are alive, and somehow more aware than ever. At night, the sky doesn't just darken, it performs. The northern lights ripple like emerald curtains, casting eerie shadows across the frozen expanse. You whisper a prayer to Thor, maybe to Odin, maybe to your mother. The cold listens, but it doesn't answer, and in the distance, footprints. Human, animal, you can't be sure. but they're fresh, and they're not yours. You grip your axe, yes, the one still sheathed at your side, blessedly spared by the wreck. Your heart thunders. Could someone else have survived? Could there be life in this white wasteland? You follow the prints. They vanish into wind-blown snowdrift, like a cruel joke. But something changes. You start to move with purpose, not just to live, but to understand, to find whatever left those prints, because anything, even danger, is better than this bone-deep loneliness. But even as you press on, a thought lingers like frostbite. This place doesn't want you here, and it will take everything you've got just to see the next sunrise. The snow crunches beneath your boots with that glassy, almost hollow sound, like walking across the ribs of the earth itself. You follow the footprints for hours, maybe longer. Time doesn't behave normally out here. There's no sun to track, no familiar bird song to hint at the hour. Just an endless sheet of white that plays tricks on your eyes and a cold that feels personal, like it's trying to crawl inside your bones and squat there rent-free. Eventually, the trail disappears entirely, buried by wind or erased by something else you don't know. But the ache in your legs and the tightness in your chest tell you to stop. You need shelter, real shelter, not just a pity lean-to made of sadness and shipwreck. That's when you find the hollow. It's more of a fissure than a cave, really. A jagged crack in a cliff wall, half concealed by snow and shadow. You peer inside, nothing but darkness, and the faint, terrifying possibility of a polar bear nap zone. You take the risk anyway. At this point, frostbite is a bigger threat than fur and teeth. Inside, the wind dies. It's still cold, but the kind of cold you can reason with. The kind that doesn't slap your face every 10 seconds. You wedge some driftwood across the entrance, light a pathetic little fire using dried kelp and the last sliver of flint from your kit. It smokes more than it flames, but it's something. You huddle beside it, shoulders trembling, and that's when it really hits you. You are completely, horrifyingly alone. The Arctic doesn't care about your bloodline. It doesn't care that you once shared a horn of mead with a jarl. It doesn't care that you know the names of the gods or how to gut a herring. Out here, you are just meat trying not to freeze. You talk to yourself a little, not in a uh-oh. He's losing it way not yet anyway, but just to keep the sound of a human voice in the air. You tell stories, recite sagas you half remember, pretend someone's listening. Sometimes, you even make jokes, soft, tired ones, like when your only fish hook snaps in half and you say, "Guess the fish are safe today." But every joke echoes back at you, like the ice is mocking your optimism. One night, maybe your fifth alone, maybe your 15th, you wake up to a noise, a distinct, rhythmic scraping, not wind, not snow shifting. You grab your axe, heart pounding like a war drum. You creep toward the cave's entrance and freeze. Eyes, 2 of them, glinting in the dark like tiny green stars. You don't breathe. The creature steps forward. A fox, Arctic white, nose twitching, paws silent. You both stare at each other for a long moment. 2 survivors in a world not built for either of you. Then, as if bored by your entire existence, the fox turns and vanishes into the snow. It's a small thing, a fleeting thing, but it reminds you that you're not the only heartbeat in this frozen hellscape. That maybe, just maybe, Life still pulses out here, even if faintly. You begin to adapt. You learn which snowbanks hide edible roots. You discover that walrus blubber, while disgusting, is a fantastic fuel for fire. You learn to read the sky's moods. When a blizzard is brewing, when the ice might crack beneath your feet. Did you know some Viking explorers were thought to have used sunstone's translucent crystals to navigate through cloudy skies? Historians still argue whether that's myth or real navigational science, but you'd kill for a sunstone right now, or just a working compass, or heck, a dry pair of socks. Instead, you get another storm. This one howls like it hates you. You're trapped inside your cave for days, maybe more. Snow builds up at the entrance until it blocks all light. You sit in darkness, burning your last scraps of seal fat and muttering sagas to the smoke. Here's the thing, no one tells you about total darkness. It's loud. You start hearing things, voices, whispers in Old Norse, the rustle of a cloak, the scrape of a sword being drawn. You know it's not real, but part of you hopes it is, because real means someone else might be alive. The storm ends, eventually. They always do. But when you finally dig your way out, blinking into the eerie pale light, everything looks different. Your footprints have vanished. The cliff face seems unfamiliar. For a second, you wonder if you imagined the whole thing, if you're still adrift at sea, hallucinating in hypothermic delirium. But then you spot something new, a carving, low on a rock face, just above the snow line. There's a set of strange markings, deliberate and deep, not natural, not Norse, something older. You kneel beside it, tracing the grooves with your gloved fingers. Your breath clouds the air like fog. A fringe theory comes to mind, one you once heard from an old skald in Bergen after too much mead. He spoke of a lost people in the north, people who could vanish into snow, who left messages for the wind and carved warnings for those who dared follow. You scoff, but you keep looking over your shoulder anyway. The loneliness presses in. You start talking to your fire like it's a friend. You name the fox if it visits again. You laugh at jokes no one hears. You are not broken, not yet, but your sanity, like your firewood, is beginning to run low. And somewhere out there beyond the next ridge, something is watching. You wake up with ice in your beard and the taste of cold ash on your tongue. The fire's died down to embers, and your breath comes out in thin puffs, barely warm enough to fog the air. Another day begins assuming it is a day. The Arctic doesn't follow your rules. The sun, when it appears, only skims the horizon like it's too tired to rise. But you're not dead. That's the headline. Still breathing, still kicking. And after weeks, or is it months of scavenging and surviving, your Viking blood starts whispering, build something better. You need more than a cave. You need a shelter, a home, something to outlast the cold and the isolation that's starting to scratch at your brain like a trapped raven. So, you begin. You find the driftwood along the coast, swept in by storms and tides. It's not much, but it's enough. You haul it back across the snow, dragging each piece like sacred treasure. Some logs are frozen solid, others are rotten in the middle, but you work with what you've got. You're a Viking. You don't wait for perfect materials, you make do. You start with a frame, then walls, then a roof stitched with seal hide, lashed tight with braided sinew from the reindeer, You finally manage to trap using a crude snare and a lot of patience. Your hands crack, your knuckles bleed, your fingertips go numb so often you stop noticing. But the hut takes shape, slowly, stubbornly. Like you line the inside with moss dried, not frozen, and wrap sealskins into makeshift bedding. It's not cozy. Exactly. But it no longer feels like you're sleeping in death's waiting room. The wind doesn't scream through every crack. The fire, when you get it going, doesn't blow out the moment you blink. One night, nestled under your patchwork blanket of skins, you allow yourself a strange, impossible thought. Maybe you can survive this. That night, you dream. You're back in Norway, walking the muddy path toward the longhouse where your sister used to sing. You can smell roasted meat. You hear laughter, but when you try to step forward, the snow drags you back, and everyone turns away as if you were never real. You wake up with tears frozen to your cheeks. Don't worry, no one's judging. Solitude does weird things to your heart. Emotionally, this is where it hits hardest. The longing, not just for warmth or food or even company, but for memory, for belonging. You start whispering names into the wind just to keep them alive. Your brother, your captain, the dog you once had that ate half your glove and still got belly rubs. The Arctic has no mercy for memory, but you remember anyway. Now, the routine begins. You hunt seals using a sharpened bone harpoon, waiting motionless beside breathing holes for hours at a time. You stretch strips of meat and hang them to freeze dry in the wind. You craft a sled from bones and bark. You gather snow lichen, yes. It tastes like regret, but it fills your stomach. You find a trickle of spring water under the ice, steaming just enough to keep your skin from cracking open with every sip. A historical tidbit for you Norse settlers in Greenland relied heavily on driftwood and scavenged materials for everything from tools to buildings. With no trees on the ice, what floated in from the sea was as precious as golds. Your greatest find, though, is a whale carcass, massive, beached, and partially buried under a snow dune. The meat's gone foul, but the bones, those beautiful, sturdy bones, become beams for your second structure, a storage hut. You lash them together with walrus hide, hollow out the snow around it, and suddenly you've got something close to a village of one. You carve a small figure out of bone, a god, maybe, or just something to keep you company. You talk to it, you laugh at your own jokes. Then comes the bear. You spot it near the edge of the bay, massive, white, slow-moving, but unmistakably deadly. It sniffs the air. You freeze, watching from behind a boulder. It's beautiful in that I could end you with one swipe kind of way, but it's also competition and a very real threat. You track it for a day, not to kill it yet, but to learn it. You watch where it feeds, where it sleeps. You memorize its path. Then one night, it comes too close. You hear it sniffing at your hut. You grab your axe, your heart jackhammering in your chest. It snorts. You step out, slowly, not to confront it, but to be seen. You raise your arms. You shout. It stares, blinks, then turns and lumbers off. You collapse to your knees, sobbing from the adrenaline. You just faced down death in fur and claws and won. You start marking the passing of time with bone notches on your doorframe. 27, 50, 100. At some point, You lose count. You carve a new calendar into stone based on moon phases and storm patterns. Then, one evening, as the sky bruises with twilight, you hear it. A voice, not the wind, not your own, a human voice, and it's speaking something you don't understand. At first, you think you're imagining it. The voice, soft, lilting, unmistakably human, floats toward you across the snow like smoke. It doesn't belong here. Nothing has spoken to you well, no one's been here except the bear and the fox, and they definitely don't do small talk. You drop your bone-carving mid-stroke and rise, eyes scanning the frost-bitten horizon. The sound comes again. A word, maybe two, not Norse, not anything you recognize. It's musical, almost like a chant. You grab your axe because this is still the Arctic, and out here, anything that sings in the dark is either very wise or very dangerous. You follow the voice, carefully, heart thudding. Every step is an argument between hope and terror. There, just beyond the ridge, a figure, small, wrapped in furs so thick they look like a walking snowdrift. You freeze. They freeze for a heartbeat. The whole world holds its breath. Then the figure lifts a hand, not in threat, but greeting. They speak again, still not your language, but the tone is warm, calm, reassuring. You lower your axe. This is your first encounter with the people later known as the Thule ancestors of modern Inuit and masters of Arctic survival. While Norse sagas barely mention them, archaeological evidence shows these indigenous communities thrived in the frozen north long before your longship ever touched ice. The stranger gestures, points to the horizon, makes a sweeping motion you interpret as "come with me." You hesitate. You've built a home. You've survived this long, but you also haven't had a real conversation in what feels like centuries. So you follow. The walk is long. The sky burns with strange colors, ribbons of green and violet twisting in the darkness. You've heard stories about the aurora borealis, but you've never seen it like this. The lights feel alive, almost watching. The stranger, still silent, leads you to a cluster of snow-covered huts nestled between icy hills. They're half buried, designed to trap warmth and block the wind. Smoke rises from a seal oil lamp. You smell cooked meat. Your stomach groans audibly, and the stranger chuckles. Inside the nearest hut, you meet more of them, wide-eyed children, fur-clad elders, all staring, all cautious. One of them offers you a bowl of something hot. You take it without question and down it in seconds. It's oily, fishy, and it tastes like salvation. They don't ask your name. Maybe they already know it. Maybe names don't matter much when you're a lone man stumbling into a village carved from snow and grit. Over the next few days, you learn more through gestures than words. These people know the ice like you once knew the sea. They've mapped every crack, every migration path, every dangerous patch of thin ice. They teach you how to build a kajak, a narrow sealskin kayak, so finely tuned it slices through water like a knife. You watch, slack-jawed, as a boy no older than 10 harpoons a fish through a hole the size of your fist. They don't treat you like a guest, nor like a threat. You're more like a curiosity, a strange man from the south who somehow didn't die. A soft moment comes on your third night. One of the elders places a carved charm in your palm. It's shaped like a bird, simple and worn smooth from years of handling. She pats your hand and murmurs something that sounds like a blessing. You sleep that night without waking once. Emotionally, it's overwhelming. You've gone from a frozen cave and imaginary conversations with fire to warm food and people who, despite the odds, accept you. It's not home, but it's the closest thing you've felt in years. A sensory moment burns itself into your mind, the texture of sealskin being stretched taut across a frame, the rhythmic scrape, scrape, scrape of bone against hide, the smell of blubber smoke curling from the lamp. It clings to everything: your clothes, your hair, your soul, and then, just when you start to believe you've found some strange new tribe to join, you make a mistake. You go back to your hut, not for long, just to gather supplies, maybe a few carvings, that carved bone figure you talked to. But when you arrive, you find the bears returned, and it's inside, ransacked everything. Skins torn, food gone, the bones you'd so carefully lashed into shelter are scattered like discarded toys. It's not there now, but it could be nearby. You stand in the snow, axe limp in your hand, and feel the weight of everything crumble. You thought you were adapting, surviving, but out here, nothing is ever truly safe. Not your shelter, not your solitude, not even your sanity. Historians still argue whether Norse and Thule peoples ever truly coexisted, or merely brushed paths before vanishing from each other's records. But standing here, in the ruins of your effort, you understand something deeper. Survival doesn't care about records, only choices. You return to the village, wordless, broken, maybe, but not defeated. That night, the village elder nods at you slowly, as if she knew it would happen. She hands you a tool, an ulu knife, curved and sharp, and gestures toward the coast. Winter's not over, and neither is your story. You wake to a rhythmic thump, a scraping, dragging sound just outside the hut. At first, your body refuses to rise. Warmth is too rare, too sacred, but instinct eventually shoves you upright. You step outside, pulling furs around you, and see a line of villagers hauling something across the ice. A seal, massive, fresh, its dark eyes glassy, its body a gift from the sea. No celebration, no cheering, just silent, coordinated movement. Everyone knows what to do. You join without being asked, grabbing a rope and pulling in time with the others. The cold bites deep, but the movement keeps you alive. Afterward, there's a quiet feast. Fat renders in the fire. Children chew on bits of frozen flesh like candy. One woman carefully peels a strip of hide and stretches it across a drying rack. Nothing goes to waste. You're offered a portion of liver raw, warm, slippery. It smells like brine and iron. You eat it without hesitation. Nutrient-rich and prized among Arctic peoples, fresh liver was essential for preventing scurvy. Your ancestors back home would gag, but here, it's survival food. You've stopped flinching. Adaptation is no longer an effort. It's reflex. The days grow longer, slowly, subtly. At first, it's just a hint of color that lingers longer than usual. Then a sliver of sun peeks above the horizon, gold bleeding into white. You squint, overwhelmed. You forgot what warmth felt like on your eyelids. Emotion stirs deep inside wonder, awe, maybe even gratitude. Not just to survive, but to see the sun again. You whisper thanks, not sure to whom. You spend more time with the villagers now, helping dig snow tunnels for storage, carving new sled runners, sharpening bone tools. One child teaches you how to mimic seal calls. You fail miserably at first, your voice cracking like a teenage raven, but eventually you earn a chuckle from the group. Laughter is rare out here. When it comes, it's gold. The villagers tell stories around the lamp. You don't understand the words, but you catch the rhythm, the rise and fall of voices, the way hands dance through the air. One tale involves a spirit that hides in the wind and steals your breath if you don't greet it respectfully. You start whispering hello into the gusts, just in case. A mainstream historical fact: Viking explorers who settled in Greenland often faced environmental collapse due to their unwillingness to adopt indigenous survival strategies. Refusing to eat raw meat, dress in furs, or learn from local peoples led many to perish when trade routes failed. But you're not that kind of Viking. You learn to ice fish using bone-tipped spears. You figure out how to read snow the way you once read waves, what patches mean danger, what drifts mean shelter. One day, an elder hands you a long piece of sinew and nods toward a sled. You help repair it, following their careful, quiet instructions. Then comes the hunt, not just for seal, for caribou. The group sets out at dawn, armed with spears, bows, and knowledge passed down for generations. You move as one, slow and steady, following tracks through the snow. The wind howls, the cold feels alive. Then you see them, 4 caribou, their antlers like twisted tree branches, trotting across a white hill. The group splits. You follow 2 hunters in a wide arc, flanking from the side, breath tight in your chest, hands frozen around your weapon. A shot rings out a bow twang, and one of the caribou stumbles. You charge. Your spear finds flesh. The animal thrashes, kicks, then goes still. You don't cheer. You don't need to. The moment is sacred, heavy. The hunters murmur a prayer, something quiet, respectful. You bow your head, not knowing the words but understanding the weight. Emotionally, this hits like thunder. You've gone from outcast to participant, from desperate survivor to valued member. You didn't just witness the hunt, you helped feed the village. You return under a sky thick with stars. The aurora shivers overhead, pale green ripples like silk in water. Someone plays a drum soft, low, hypnotic. You fall asleep beside the fire, and this time, you don't dream of home. You dream of snow, of laughter, of the girl who taught you how to whistle through her fingers. But not everything stays peaceful. One evening, a storm rolls in fast, fierce, and unrelenting. The sky goes black at noon. The wind screams like 1,000 ghosts. Snow crashes against the huts, burying the entrances. You help shovel, hands blistering from the effort. Inside, children cry. The oil lamp flickers, the roof creaks, then caves in, not completely, but enough. Everyone scrambles to evacuate. You throw your body across the broken edge, shielding a boy with your back. Cold seeps in, ice cuts your cheek, but no one dies. In the morning, you rebuild, quicker this time, smarter. You and the villagers work like hands on a clock, each person moving in time. With purpose, you're not just surviving anymore. You belong, yet even in this new rhythm, the past never quite lets go. You catch yourself carving Norse runes into a bone handle. You hum an old sea shanty as you patch a boot. One night, you sketch the outline of a longship in the snow, then quickly erase it. Historians still argue whether individuals like you, lone Norse survivors, ever fully integrated into indigenous Arctic societies, or if they remained always a little apart. You don't have an answer. Some days, you feel like a shadow wearing someone else's coat. Other days, you feel like a brother. Then one morning, you spot something far on the horizon, a sail. You squint into the rising sun, trying to be sure. For a moment, it could be a trick of the light, a dark smear where the sea meets the sky. But then it shifts, flutters, the unmistakable shape of a sail, stiff in the wind. Your heart goes sideways. It's not your imagination. It's a ship. Not a long ship, not quite. Smaller, heavier, a nar. Maybe a cargo vessel from Greenland. You count the crew from afar, 5, maybe 6 figures, bundled in furs, clearly not Inuit, Norse, like you, like who you used to be. You feel a pull deep in your chest, like a rope you didn't know was still tied around your ribs. What are they doing out here? You leave the village before sunrise, leaving a few murmured words to the elder who meets your eye and simply nods. She knows, doesn't ask you to stay, doesn't stop you. There's no anger in her face, just a soft sadness, like someone watching a bird choose to fly. You trek toward the coast. Your legs remember how to move fast now. Your breath fogs before you. The sky is open and blue, the wind whipping across the frozen waves. The ship anchors just offshore, bobbing in the ice-lined water. You raise a hand. They see you. Voices call out, familiar, sharp-edged, speaking your language. They row in, and there, suddenly, you are face to face with the past. The crew is worn leathery skin, cracked hands, suspicion baked into their eyes. They ask questions fast. Who are you? What's your clan? Are there any riches here? Are there women? Are you a ghost? You answer with your name. They don't recognize it. You tell them your tale, compressed into a few heartbeats. They laugh, not unkindly, but incredulously. 20 years here, one of them mutters. Alone you nod. One of them claps your back so hard you almost fall over. Another eyes your clothing sewn hide and sinew, perfectly tailored to the climate. You look like one of them, he says, not kindly. You glance toward the hills where your new family sleeps and feel a strange wave of shame for the way he spits the word them. You ask where they came from. Greenland, they say, but it's not doing well. Crops fail, trades dried up. People talk about sailing west toward stories of lush forests and easier winters. Then they offer you a place. Come back with us. One says, we've room. You're still Norse, aren't you? It's not an accusation. Exactly, but it stings. You spend that night on the ship, curled in a foreign bunk, feeling the sway of the sea under your body again. You thought it would be comforting. It isn't. It feels like someone else's heartbeat. There's hard bread and ale. You choke it down. The men tell stories, none of them quite right. You correct one, and they look at you like you've spoken heresy. Their laughter feels too loud, too brittle, emotionally. It's disorienting. You thought you missed this, your people, your tongue, your past. But now that you're inside it again, it feels wrong. like a coat you outgrew a lifetime ago. A sensory detail sticks with you, the stink of unwashed men, sour ale, and wet wool. It clings to everything aboard. You miss the clean bite of snow, the smell of smoked seal meat, the sound of children laughing in the tunnels. At dawn, you climb out of the boat and back onto the ice. They call after you. You wave, but don't turn. You walk slowly at first, then faster, breath sharp in your lungs. By midday, you crest the hill and see your village again, its white roofs blending into the snow, smoke curling from chimneys like ghost fingers reaching skyward. The elder greets you at the edge of the huts, says nothing, just places a bowl of hot broth in your hands. And just like that, you're home. But something's shifted. You begin to teach, not just carve and hunt. You draw maps in the snow, showing where ships once sailed. You build models of boats, teach the children knots and stars. You speak both languages, now your old one and theirs. A new one begins to form. One of the villagers brings you a gift, a harpoon with Norse runes etched into the shaft, a merging of two worlds. You press your forehead to it and whisper thanks. A quirky tidbit, you start wearing a necklace with two charms, one shaped like a Norse hammer, the other like an Inuit whale. A quiet, personal treaty. You marry, eventually, not in a church, not with rings, just two hands clasped in the snow, two hearts beating in the silence. Historians still debate whether these kinds of unions happened true cultural blending in the Arctic frontier. No definitive record proves it, but oral histories hint, and archaeological sites reveal a curious mix of artifacts, Norse nails beside bone tools, Norse-style wool woven into Inuit patterns. You live many more years. Your beard turns white. Your back bends. You become the quiet man who knows things. The children ask about longships and gods with hammers. You tell them gently, slowly, like unspooling a story from a dream. Emotion takes you sometimes, usually in the wind or the stars. You stand alone and feel the vastness press in, but it doesn't crush you anymore. It welcomes you. You've become a myth. They say you came from the sea, that you speak to bears, that you once walked with ghosts and came back wiser. And maybe you did, but one morning, as the ice breaks and the light spills gold over the hills, you simply walk out to the coast and watch. No longships come anymore, only wind. Spring peels back the ice like a fruit, slow and sticky. You wake one morning to find the shoreline cracking tiny rivers running through once frozen veins. The sea lapping closer with a slush of crushed snow and brine. The world shifts, and with it, your rhythm. You no longer count days by sun or dark, but by cycles of seal migration, by the angle of the shadows, by how much driftwood the tide coughs up. You measure time in fires lit and fish smoked. Children grow, their voices deepen. Some remember you as the strange man from the south. Others only know you as part of the landscape, like the cliffs or the ice itself. They come to you with questions. What was it like on the ship? Were there really trees so tall you couldn't see the tops? Did people eat grass? You smile and answer as much as you can. You keep some stories for yourself, not out of secrecy, but reverence. Some memories are too sacred to hand over like spare buttons. You've built a small hut of your own now, a little removed from the village. Its modest packed snow, seal-hide door, bits of shipwood reinforcing the ceiling. A smoke hole overhead lets in stars at night. Inside, your treasures: a carved walrus tusk, a rusted axe, a bit of blue cloth from a Greenland tunic, and that necklace, still strung around your neck after all these years. The Whale and the Hammer, a history book in miniature. You fish most days now, some for food, some for calm. There's something about ice cracking under your boots, the patience of a baited line. You talk to yourself more, or maybe to the spirits. You're not sure when the difference stopped mattering. A sensory detail catches you: the sharp sting of salt water in your nose as you bend to rinse a fish. You never used to notice that. Now it feels like a greeting from the ocean, not a threat. One day, a small group arrives from the south, not Norse, not quite Inuit either. They wear furs stitched with curious symbols, speak a dialect you strain to catch. Traders, they say, from the fringes. They've heard of you, the man who crossed worlds, the one who survived. They offer you goods: copper needles, strange berries, carved charms of unknown gods. You trade stories in return. Your memory becomes a form of currency. They leave behind a leather pouch embroidered with stars. You keep it on your shelf like a book you'll read later. A mainstream historical fact by the 11th century. Norse trade routes had begun to stretch thinner, with voyages to North America and deep into Arctic territory. These routes left behind odd pockets of mixed culture: blended tools, half-translated carvings, graves with unexpected offerings. One night, as the fire hisses low, a child asks you the question that stops your breath. What will happen when you're gone? You think for a long time. Then you reach for a piece of bone and carve your name into it, not just the one you were born with, but the one they gave you here, the name that means between waters. You give the bone to her. Tell them I walked, you say, not from one world to another, but between, and maybe that's what it all was. Not an exile, not a journey, but a path along the edge, never fully on land, never fully at sea. One evening, you climb a ridge alone. The wind is wild, snapping your fur like sails. You stand where the ice melts first, where the earth smells like stone and moss. Below, the village is small and quiet, tucked into the snow like a heartbeat under a thick quilt. You feel it then, the tug of all the years, 20 and more, not as a burden, but as a rope across time. And for the first time in decades, you speak your mother tongue aloud, not to anyone, just to the air, just to hear it again. It sounds like a lullaby. You remember your brother's voice, long faded, the feel of a ship's tiller under your palm, the salt that used to sting your eyes in warmer oceans. You remember a mother's hand on your shoulder, a priest's chant, a dog barking. None of it makes you want to leave. Emotion wells up quietly, not crashing like waves, but like water rising between stones, gentle, complete. Historians still argue whether stories like yours ever truly happened, whether a lone Norseman could have survived, thrived alone in the Arctic, embedded in a foreign people. The archaeological evidence is fragmentary. The oral histories are full of ghosts. But as you watch the aurora stretch like silk above you, none of that matters. You're here, and now. You rest. A storm rolls in that night, soft, almost apologetic. Snow taps against the hide roof like fingers drumming. You pull your cloak tighter and lie down beside the fire, its glow dancing on the tusk carvings nearby. You think about nothing in particular. You smile, and as your eyes close, a final image lingers, that far-off sail on the horizon, not coming toward you, not leaving, just sailing on, indifferent and eternal. Spring fades gently into summer, though you wouldn't know it unless you'd lived here as long as you have. The snow retreats just far enough to show moss and rock. Tiny purple flowers emerge in sheltered hollows. The air tastes less like metal and more like sky. You don't walk as far now. Your knees complain, and your breath gets short faster than before. But you move with the calm of someone who's seen enough. Every step is familiar. Every stone seems to remember your name. You sit more often on the same flat rock near the edge of the bay. You bring fish sometimes, or just yourself, and you listen. The sea has a language, not just the crashing and sighing, but a rhythm, a tide of memory. Some days it whispers your old name. Other days, it's the laugh of a child you once knew. And on rare nights, when the moon slices clean through the clouds, you could swear it's the creak of a long-lost ship. You wonder, sometimes, if you made the whole thing up, if the shipwreck, the years, the cold, were all part of a fever dream that never broke. But then a gull cries, and your fingers instinctively curl around the knife you shaped from antler. No dream leaves calluses like these. You carve less now, but more carefully, every line deliberate. The last project takes you weeks, a story pole made of driftwood, with figures etched in rings, a ship, a bear, a face half in shadow. You leave it standing near the ice cliffs. Let the wind do the rest. One afternoon, a boy finds you napping near the shore. Your head is tilted toward the sun, mouth slightly open. He shakes you once, then twice. You rouse. Slowly, "I thought you were gone," he says, half laughing. "Not yet," you mumble, stretching, but you know it's close. That night, the aurora dances, like it's trying to tell a secret. You lie in your hut and stare through the smoke hole at the sky's rippling curtain, greens and blues, a hint of violet. You think about beginnings. You think about the young man who clutched a broken tiller in the storm, about the black mountain of ice, about crawling, starving, whispering prayers into the snow. You think about how you survived not by strength, but by surrender, not to death, but to life as it came. You remember a girl who pressed seal fat into your hands, a child who giggled when you mispronounced his name, an elder who gave you shelter and never asked questions. You remember learning to listen. A quirky tidbit floats up from your memory once. In your early years, you swore you saw a polar bear dance. It stood upright on an ice floe and swayed back and forth. Maybe it was just scratching, but you liked the story better the other way. The kids do, too. Your eyes close. You drift. And this time, no one wakes you. Your passing is quiet, like fog rolling in, like a fire going out. There's no cry, no ceremony, not at first, just silence. A village waits for the sun to rise before they check. And when they do, they don't find a stranger. They find an ancestor. The children place rocks over your body in a careful cairn. One places the necklace atop it, the whale, the hammer, 2 worlds in balance, and you are gone, but not forgotten. Years pass, then decades. The world turns faster. Metal ships replace wooden ones. The ice thins, stories fade, but sometimes, on long winter nights, an elder will point to the hills and say, "He lived up there, the walker between worlds." They say your pole still stands, though it's worn smooth by wind. They say the seals come closer to shore, where your hut used to be, that the sky shines brighter on the date you died. Historians dig, still looking for bones. For truth, they find fragments, a broken comb, a boot with Norse stitching, a tooth with unusual wear. Nothing definitive, but the story persists. A lone man, a frozen land, 20 years, and the choice not to return, but to become something else, something new. And now, in the soft hush of this final moment, the fire fades low, and your story slips gently from the air, like steam from a clay cup. You were never just a survivor, you were a bridge. And now that bridge is at rest, let's slow things down now, just a little more. Imagine the last flickers of firelight curling against cold stone. The world outside your window is quieter than usual. You can almost hear snow falling, though you know it isn't. It's just the hush, the kind of hush that settles when a story finally lands in the soft part of your heart. Close your eyes. Picture that small village tucked beneath an Arctic ridge. See the soft trails of smoke winding into a sky painted green and blue. Somewhere in the dark, a man sleeps, not alone, not anymore. You can still feel the echo of the wind across the ice, can't you? You know the bite of salt air, the weight of fur across your shoulders. For a little while, you walked in someone else's footprints, rough, uncertain, but always forward. And even now, as your own breathing slows, that journey lingers in your chest. No sails on the horizon tonight, no storms, just the sea, the stars, and a silence deeper than language. Take one last deep breath. Hold it. Now let it go. Wherever you are, whether wrapped in blankets or curled up in a quiet room, I hope you feel a little closer to the edge of the world and a little more at peace with standing there. The story is over. See you tomorrow night. Sweet dreams.